Litigation is where we go when nothing else is working. But how do you avoid conflict within your business from getting to that costly point? Because if you've ever worked in a family business, you know how tempting it is to avoid the hard conversations until they explode. And that can be costly. And that's where my guest, Katie Kolon, comes in. Her journey from attorney to mediator is all about navigating that conflict before the explosion. She shows us that conflict, when handled with intention and compassion, can actually strengthen relationships and unlock deeper trust. And that insight really hit home for me because I've seen firsthand how much damage silence can do in a family business. So if you're navigating tension, you're feeling stuck in patterns of misunderstanding, or you're afraid of what might happen if you really say what's on your mind, this episode is for you. Be sure to hit subscribe for more fearless conversations about family, business, and legacy so that we can both lean into this hard stuff together. Enjoy the episode. Strengthen the love, the legacy, and the lifestyle in your family business. This is Fearless Family Business. Well, welcome, Katie. I'm so glad you're here joining me today. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
I'm excited to talk to you for a variety of reasons, but primarily, especially with regards to conflict and mediation and really navigating some of those difficult conversations, especially within family business. It's a big deal. And from your perspective, I can see how when you were practicing as an attorney, that you might have seen kind of the tail end of that when things get almost when you're seeing kind of the last resort, right? From that.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear, kind of maybe start with how that shaped your perspective and how you navigate conflict from the standpoint of really handling those conversations now.
Yeah, well, I started as a plaintiff side employment law attorney. And
Hmm.
so with those types of claims, and with a lot of claims really, there are personal violations that are probably mostly what's motivating people. And all they know is the legal system and the civil process, which is money. And money is the only remedy for all of the harms that you might, or the violations you might have felt.
Hmm.
And so it really falls short no matter how much money you get. And usually people expect that they're going to get a lot more money than they will, unfortunately.
Sure. Sure.
So, it's, I think leaving litigation and then exploring more and becoming certified, becoming a mediator, it's just really showed me how much more possibility there is to heal those sorts of interpersonal wounds that happen when there's any kind of ongoing relationship. Even if it's in the workplace and it's someone you don't like, there's still a relationship there.
Hmm.
So things happen, and a little bit of understanding can go a long way, but that's not something you usually get through litigation.
Yeah. Yeah. So I feel like that's like kind of like the where we go when nothing else is working. Is that right? I mean, it's just like we don't want to get to that point, do we? We don't want to get to litigation.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I'm curious to know kind of maybe your origin story. How you mentioned you were on the plaintiff's side of employment law. Can you talk a little bit about what got you into that, how you got there, and what you were doing on that side of the I guess the bar exam, so to speak?
Yeah. Well, in law school, you need to find an internship. Yeah, I
Mhm.
guess what drew me to law school is probably a longer story, but I grew up in a small rural town in Michigan, and there's a lot of farm workers there. So I found an internship with a farm worker legal aid association. And my parents both actually worked with migrant farm workers in various capacities. So it was just kind of a cool thing to be able to go to back home and do work in my community with people who really needed help and were being abused in various ways, not being paid, or not being provided adequate or healthy housing. And so that kind of began this path into employment law. And I ended up with other jobs working with migrant farm workers, and then that expanded into all, other kinds of workers' rights, and including discrimination and unemployment appeals. But yeah, mostly all in the employment law area.
Yeah. So I imagine growing up in a small community like that, you did it feel like it was close knit in that kind of environment? Did you feel like you had kind of that similar feel for what a family would look like, what that conflict was back then? I know I've heard kind of some of the stuff that you've put out there regarding, how it's taught you tolerance, empathy, and the value of that community. I'd love to expand on that and
Mhm.
hear some of your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think it's kind of interesting because my family wasn't from that town. And so a lot of people have generations of family, and the teachers are like, oh, I taught your father when he was in school, and that kind of thing. So there wasn't quite as much of that. And so we were kind of outsiders. We were outsiders in a lot of ways to the community, but
Mm-hmm.
still, um, everyone there, it's just, I mean, yeah, growing up in a small town, you just like the door's always open. I never had a key to the house. Um, if some problem was happening, you just walk over and deal with it. Just walk over to someone's house and talk to them about it. And my parents still live there. They still have that experience where they have neighbors all around, and they may or may not get along with them ideologically, but they they work well together, or they don't, depending on how they what their interpersonal skills are, what their communication skills are.
Hmm. Yeah, I find that interesting that the dynamic around that small kind of community feel. And so you say your parents weren't originally from there. Where were they originally?
They
Where
grew
did
up in
they?
Detroit.
Oh, okay. So they grew up in a big city, coming to kind
Hmm.
of that small community.
Yeah.
And okay, and from that perspective of what you saw, I mean, I think in because I see that there may be this maybe kind of overlapping dynamic within a small community and what a family business might look like, being multi-generational, having that like they've known each other for generations.
Hmm.
Do you see any of the common themes there with regard to how that might overlap with how families interact and experience conflict or tension on that front?
Um, I think, I mean, there's definitely, I just mainly see the difference in, those who have been there forever, like maybe that's the family, and then those who come to work with it, maybe.
Right.
Um, and whether you feel more or less like an outsider, I guess, really just depends on how well you can communicate and understand each other.
Yeah. How would you navigate that, or how did you, or did your parents maybe navigate that feeling of being outside and trying to become in this community, so to speak? And I guess the reason I ask is because I feel like there may be outsiders, like an outside leader, or that may come into a family business that's already well established, and it feels like it's already, for lack of a better word, a tribe, a community.
Hmm.
What was the mechanism for getting more involved in that community?
I think it just happens because you're there and it is so small. I mean, I guess if you're not involved at all, if you don't do anything, you're not participating in the community, then you wouldn't feel that way. But it's just a matter of participation and reaching out to others. And I mean, I guess I would reach out to people like the migrant farm workers. I was always talking, curious about what brought them there, and um, the kids in school. Sometimes they came in only speaking Spanish, and so I think my family is just kind of curious and open like that, interested in people. I mean, my dad was a social worker, my mom was a teacher for kids with special needs. So I don't know. There's just kind of that sense of wanting to help and interact with people in my family that probably helped.
I like that. Yeah. So the feeling, and I think that I feel like that may be a common theme within any kind of entry into any community is have a servant mind, or at least be willing to
Mhm.
serve in some capacity, add value, and be curious. I really love that idea of curiosity. Uh, so and I think that's just what should be driving us to grow,
Mhm.
and kind of maybe moving to the next kind of phase of your life. Moving into that role as once you got into being that plaintiff's attorney. Maybe can you talk about that, what that experience was like, and how that shaped where you're going today?
It was pretty frustrating at first. I mean, you go to law school and you have all these ideas, like it's so grandiose, and you're taught these high standards and you're held to high standards in law school, and then the world of actually practicing law can be totally different. I mean, I guess it probably depends on the type of law and the type of defendants, and but the I just remember my first time going to court with uh, opposing counsel, and we had a motion before the judge, and I had written my brief perfectly, and then the opposing counsel's brief and what he was doing didn't even follow civil procedure. It was like horribly written, and he just had a great relationship with the judge. So there you go. It's like the relationship is what mattered, and
Yeah.
as a new attorney, you don't really have those relationships at all, and
Mm.
then you realize, oh, like all of these all these other little things don't matter as much. And it's kind of frustrating because you spent so much time and money and effort trying to master those things.
Mm. It- do you feel like that's true within our broader judicial system as far as, and I'm not trying to get political or anything like that, but I'm just curious to know from the standpoint of someone who's been in it, do you feel like that uh, our judicial system is more inclined to be based on kind of that backroom deals, relationships, things like that, as opposed to really following the letter of the law? I don't know if that question even makes sense, but I'm just curious to know your thoughts on that.
I think it depends on where you're practicing and
Hmm.
what level. Like, I think that was less so at the federal level. I practiced in both federal and state and local courts. So it's probably more at play on the local level. But then again, I mean, if you're regularly before particular judges in federal court, you probably get to know them pretty well too.
Yeah.
I was kind of all over the place, so it's hard for me to say really.
Sure, sure. Yeah, yeah, you hear both sides of it on the outside, and you never know what's really true necessarily. Of course, anytime you're involved in litigation and something goes your way or the other way, it always feels, like, well, yeah, that's unfair because it went to it favored the other person or what have you. Yeah, I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. And so you
Yeah, but I
just,
think I
yeah.
just was one thing. Sorry, I just was
Oh no,
thinking
please.
in relation to mediation and conflict resolution
Mhm.
versus the courts. Like, regardless of whether there's a relationship or not, when you go to court as a plaintiff or as a defendant, like you're losing control of what happens. You're placing that in the hands of someone else, whether they're going to base their decisions more on relationships or on following the law, or even if it's a jury, that's a whole other group of people that are going to weigh in on your life basically. So
Sure.
you lose a lot of that. You lose most of the control, yeah, as well as the ability to tell your own story.
Hmm. Right. Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate the context there. But and so you kind of made a decision to depart from that world and move into more of the conflict mediation, navigating that kind of conflict area. I'd love for you to talk about how that transition came to be, and yeah, move into right kind of what you're doing now, helping family businesses and otherwise.
Yeah, so I didn't, it wasn't totally my choice. It was partially my choice. I lost my job after moving to Chicago.
Mm.
Um, it was grant funded. I worked in the nonprofit world, and I didn't, it was the middle of a recession. And I also was kind of getting burned out, and I didn't want to move back where I had more of a network and more relationships on the East Coast. So I stayed, and then pursued opportunities for a while, ended up working in the corporate world. But when I, right when I was losing that job that brought me here, I also got certified as a mediator, and I started working and volunteering with the Center for Conflict Resolution. Then I became a certified coach with their training program as well. And I've been doing that ever since for the past going on 14 years now. And I first actually took a mediation training when I was getting my master's degree. I did a JDMA program in international relations. So they did a training for students to mediate other student disputes. So I
Mm,
first took mediation training, not in law school, but in my master's program. But I never mediated there because I found out about it at the end of my time there. But that was my first sort of experience with it, and I really liked it, and I think that stuck with me. And then we went to lots of mediations in litigation, and everything settled. So coming to getting training with the Center for Conflict Resolution and starting to do those types of cases, which was a variety of cases, um, it just made me less interested, more less and less interested in
sure.
litigation as I saw these other ways to solve things.
Yeah. I like that. And so now that you're kind of moving away from that world of litigation where people come to you as that kind of last resort, where are you seeing people that are seeking out those kinds of services for conflict resolution? When do people come to you?
They still come when there is some sort of pain point.
Mhm.
I'm also networking with other advisors who probably see the need sooner to bring someone like me in,
Mhm.
um, to reduce the risk of, succession planning or deals or whatever. But when the clients come directly to me, it's more like they're having problems with their business partnerships or family dynamics. Yeah, I still mediate a variety of different things.
Mhm.
The cases that I mediate still for the Center for Conflict Resolution mostly are court mandated, but there are also people who just can come and ask they want to have anything mediated. It doesn't have to be in court.
Right.
So we do get those types of cases as well.
Gotcha. And based on what you've seen in your world and when people come to you, what would your suggestion as far as people seeking out that mediation? When should they come to you? Because I imagine maybe they come to you a little late in the process, or maybe they don't. Maybe they're not. Maybe they're coming too early. What what do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard for me to weigh in on what they should do. I mean, I think it would be great if people had access to this type of service and it
Mm,
was more of just commonly known and commonly used. But people are probably going to wait till they have a problem, a serious
sure.
problem.
Right.
Unless they're, unless they realize the value and the need for it in planning or um, in just, yeah, facilitating important conversations that need to happen to be more productive at work or with your business.
Hmm. Yeah, and what is the so as far as the process goes, like
Mm-hmm.
when people do come to somebody like yourself for mediation or and maybe and are mediation and conflict resolution are those the same thing? Are they different? Is there some kind of barrier
Yeah, I
there?
kind of use both interchangeably, mostly because I think people associate mediation with something in litigation or some sort of conflict that way. It doesn't have to be.
Hmm.
When I say mediation, I guess there is a problem that you're coming to fix, something
Yeah,
that everyone is invested in resolving. Whether or not that gets resolved is another question, but it's kind of focused around a particular problem. And it doesn't have to be even a legal issue. You can just have any problem at all that you want to resolve. And
hmm,
then I guess I say facilitation when it's a little bit more broad, like you might be facilitating family meetings or dialogues that are ongoing around what you want for the future and what your values are, and just all of those planning conversations, especially where they get more difficult. You may need someone that comes in and facilitates. all of those skills are conflict resolution skills that are used in either process.
Okay. Yeah. So, and what are the, what, like, as far as like a process goes, if somebody does come to you for mediation, what is your role in that as far as how you serve the client? Is it an unbiased kind of perspective? Is it somebody you're making the decision on their behalf? What does that look like?
Yeah, I practice facilitative and transformative styles of mediation mainly.
Mhm.
There's also evaluative. Um, and so I focus more on putting the parties or the people in conflict in the driver's seat of figuring out what's best for them and owning that going forward. So I don't weigh in on what I think is best. I don't tell people what to do. I don't really even want to get into the facts because usually that just blows things up even more.
Mhm.
Um, they may be relevant too at times. There's some facts that are relevant you need to know to work things out. But if you're spending too much time, arguing over things that happened in the past, you're probably not going to move on from that. And mediation is much more future focused. So I
Mhm.
try to keep people focused on the goal and the future, help them prioritize how they want to use their time. Um, I help them hear each other better by rephrasing things, summarizing, helping them identify for themselves and each other what's really important to them. And and by me doing that and being like another person saying the same thing in a different way, it helps people hear it multiple times and hear it differently and um, hear it in ways they may not be able to from the person that they're upset with.
Yeah. Has there ever been any situations that have been just so um, tense and challenging that you just could not break through, or maybe they felt like it was just destined to fail? What, like, any experiences that you've had like that?
Oh, sure. Yeah. Plenty. I mean, that's the thing with mediation is like, I can't control the outcome. People have to be willing to show up and participate in good faith and authentically. And even if they want to, it may be really hard. It may be harder than they imagined. And you just can't always get there in one session or maybe ever. But even if you can't, like my job is to go through the process, ask the right questions, at least put them in their mind so they can think about it. And maybe in the future, that'll help them get to wherever they need to be. But
Yeah,
I've got plenty of, yeah, I mean,
sure.
it's, you want me to think of one? Well, I mean, the last like family business sort of mediation I did was they were in litigation for a long time and got sent to mediation by the courts, but very late in the process because they had already spent a lot of money. And one party didn't even show up, their partner did. And the party who didn't show up had some personal issue that had happened with their family member who they
Mhm.
entered into business with and that could never be discussed. They didn't want to, they couldn't even show up to discuss it. So everyone who was there, the attorneys, the partner, the other side, they all wanted to settle. They saw the value of that. They were like, we're just bleeding money all over the place. We can't afford to keep going. We're fighting over the valuation of each other's contributions, but like by the end of it, there's not going to be any money left to pay anybody. But we couldn't even have the discussion. So we weren't able to resolve it. So, I mean, that's just an extreme example of someone not being able to participate. But when they do show up, if people are really stuck on their what we call positions, or they're like doing something out of principle, that's just a red flag for there's some personal harm there that needs to be resolved or talked about to really
Sure.
move on. Otherwise, people are not going to act in what you would consider to be a rational way.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I wonder, I mean, for families in particular, do you ever make the recommendation that this is not going to be resolved here? Maybe you should seek therapy, or
Yeah,
what? Yeah.
that is part of my job too. Is just to to tell people like to end it. I don't want to hold people in this stressful conflict and dialogue for longer than they need to if it's not being productive.
Yeah.
So it's part of my responsibility also to cut it off.
Mm. Yeah. I like the idea that you said there with productive conflict. Because I mean, I've seen enough in family business to know that, or any business to know that really problems or conflict can be good for family business or for business in general,
Yeah.
because it gives you an opportunity to grow. You only grow through conflict. And I one of the when I think of conflict, I tend to think of Patrick Lencioni's conflict continuum, where you have the artificial harmony on one side, you have mean-spirited conflict on another, and the goal is to kind of get more constructive towards the middle, where
Yeah.
you want to just balance that out, put the issue in front of you. Is that kind of like have you seen more of one or the other as far as artificial harmony or mean-spirited conflict, and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of both on both sides of it,
Hmm.
and less so in the middle because people are afraid of conflict or they don't know how to handle it um, healthily. So yeah, but I mean, conflict is at the heart of all innovation and creativity, and it's any decision point can be conflict, or you could think of it that way.
Hmm.
So you really can't get away from it. And I try to get people to reframe how they think about conflict.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd love to hear more about that as far as like how to reframe it. Like if you're approaching a company that's in conflict, or a group of people that are in conflict, how would you suggest they approach that? Like maybe from start, maybe in a step-by-step basis. Is there a reframing of it off the bat, or you just getting curious? How does that work?
Um, I don't know if I can like reframe how people approach conflict without going through the process.
Mhm.
But I think going through the process is what does it because you have to get people focused on what they really need and want, helping them identify that. And then you're identifying common shared interests. And usually when you take a step back from whatever's on the surface, the underlying things going on are you have in common. And when you can see that and just realize that you find more connection with people and maybe a little bit more understanding that way, and then you can hear them better. You have more understanding for the differences in their ideas and how maybe you have the same value, but you think you didn't, but you do, and it's just expressed differently.
Yeah, I see that. Okay. And you have, and speaking of kind of going through the process, you have a playbook, or playbooks for this kind of thing, and you're building out playbooks for how to navigate this. Can you share a little bit about that, and maybe how people can approach that?
Yeah, I created this playbook for people to be able to navigate this on their own and give them some more tools. And it's a four-step process of first defining what the issue is, deciding if you even want to have the conversation with someone. So that's a lot of like self-reflection and questions and worksheets. And then um, inviting the person into conversation, so getting their buy-in, how to do that, giving you a template, and jointly coming up with that problem that you're going to tackle together. So it's always about changing the focus from against each other to against a common problem that you share.
Mm.
And that's the first agreement that you have. And then the third step is actually sitting down, having the conversation. So going through a checklist and process for that, setting the agenda, setting just the logistics and then the conversation. And then agreement writing, if you do come to that, how to write a good agreement, solid agreement, and then
Love
reflect
that.
on what you learned.
Yeah, I like that first step, in terms of maybe putting that problem or that issue in front of you instead of between you, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
how um, how do you go about that as far as like reframing people's perspectives in terms of reframing the issue, that it's not about it being a personal issue between the two people, and maybe it is, but how do you reframe it as something that, let's put this issue in front of you so you can actually attack the issue and not each other? I just feel like, yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts.
I guess depending on the context you're in, I mean, sure, there's going to be personal issues that you might want to discuss, and those are probably driving the way that you're acting. But when you're looking at a goal, you're trying to do something together.
Hmm.
And I guess that's also part of, is this even the right time or appropriate for a conversation? Like, is there any goal that you could possibly work on together? Are you in a business and something's not going right? Are you, you know, you just want to be able to show up to Thanksgiving dinner and not fight? Like, that is a common goal that you can have, even though you have personal differences.
Sure.
So thinking about, would the other person share this? Do I have this? Or is this not someone who I'm going to interact with enough that there's anything there?
Mm. And that sounds kind of like it's like taking maybe the big, meaty, hairy issue and almost breaking it down into like smaller bite-sized things and saying, hey, let's take a look at this one first and maybe attack that one and put that one in front of you instead of taking the whole bite of the elephant at the time.
It could, I guess, it could be broader though too. Just
Mhm.
stepping back and just saying, we need to be able to work together.
Yeah,
We need, we're both trying to make this business work, and we're leaders, and we have to set a good example, because the way we're interacting is going to affect how other people interact as well. Um, I think you can really take a step back and find broader goals.
sure. Well, that makes sense. You mentioned you talked a little bit about succession earlier and how you kind of involved in that in terms of this succession discussion. And I know that especially in family business can be a very tense and maybe conflict intensive process to develop that plan and also execute on it. What phase of the succession discussion are people usually bringing you in, and what are some of the common themes that you're finding around that in terms of what people need to overcome in order to have a smoother transition?
Well, it seems like people approach succession planning usually later than when advisors think they should. So I don't know if there's a common time, but I mean, common themes I think are include like identity. What is, each individual's identity? What do they want for it to be moving forward as they change roles? What are those roles and responsibilities? What's important to them? What do they want to do with their life? Like if you're retiring and you've built this whole business and this is a large part of your identity, what is that going to look like next? What are the other things that are important to you, so that you have a sense of meaning afterwards? um, Philanthropic goals, for the business, or what the values are for the business that you want it to continue,
Hmm.
for the business's legacy. um, yeah, those are the ones that came up top of my mind. And I was thinking about, I refer a lot to these books on dignity that I have here.
Mm.
So, dignity and its essential role in handling conflict, resolving conflict, and then leading with dignity. So these go through the 10 elements of dignity, which I think are really helpful. And I think in any succession planning or leadership conversation, or if it's even a, manager with employee, there's conflict there, looking at these elements of dignity can really help. And then figuring out what ones might be violated, or what do people need more of.
Mm.
And so those include acceptance of identity, inclusion, safety, acknowledgement, recognition, fairness, benefit of the doubt, understanding, independence, and accountability.
I've never heard the concept of succession and kind of dignity used in the same context like that in the same sentence. It's interesting to me. It's intriguing. Where did you, or how did you come to that conclusion that dignity was an important part of that succession planning?
Well, it's just an important part in conflict. Like these
Yeah.
things are always they always come up in any
Mm,
conflict, and they're basic human needs. And I think as human needs, and some of them go beyond, like, I mean, we have safety in here, but some of them go beyond like the really, really basic needs. They're like needs for becoming fully developed as a person or who you want to be, you know. So that exploring that is important, I think, for the planning and legacy, and making sure that as people step into maybe new leadership roles, that that is fulfilling who they want to be,
mm.
and not just like someone else's dream or a desire for power or whatever else might be at play.
Right, right. And so, and for you, where, what's next for you? What are you looking for as far as who would be reaching out to you? Who are you looking for? What type of business are you out to find?
Probably just like small, medium-sized businesses that are struggling with conversations, maybe stuck or avoiding conversations, or people who feel misunderstood, but they want
Mm,
to maintain a connection through their family and make sure that that bond is there and reduce the risk of conflicts arising and damaging those relationships.
right, great. So smaller businesses, medium-sized businesses that are really maybe being more proactive about that idea of conflict, or may experience being experiencing it right now. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense. And where can people find you?
So my website is mutual-ground.com. And I'm also on various social media, but that's my website. You can also email me at info@mutual-ground.com.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, so if you're listening to this and you are in that space where you're facing that conflict, or you see it kind of on the horizon, or there's just curiosity around this idea that conflict exists in every business, and it should. And maybe if you get better at it, at navigating it, you'll have a more successful and aligned business. Katie Kolon might be the person you want to call and and learn more about this. So if that's you, go to mutual-ground.com and get more information there. And Katie, thank you so much for being here. This was a great conversation. I really appreciate all of your insights and your wisdom, and giving us your time today.
Yeah, thank you. It was great talking to you. Great questions.
Thank you. Thanks. And everybody else out there, if you feel like you got a lot from this, or you know another business that might be facing some of these challenges, share this episode with them and put it out there. Getting the word out about family business and how we can all succeed together only makes us all stronger. So thanks for joining us today. We'll see you next time.